Johnny Carson had been hosting The Tonight Show for 30 years. 30 years of monologues, celebrity interviews, sketches that became cultural touchstones. 30 years of making America laugh before bed. He'd perfected the rhythm, the timing, the ability to keep a show moving no matter what happened. Technical difficulties? He'd improvise. Awkward guests? He'd rescue them. Dead silence? He'd fill it with a joke that would become legendary by morning. But that night, something happened that Johnny Carson couldn't manage with humor. Something that stopped the carefully orchestrated machinery of late-night television completely. It was a Thursday taping in 1978. The show was running smoothly. The monologue had landed well. A few political jokes, some commentary on the news, the usual Carson magic. The audience was warm, responsive, exactly the kind of crowd that made hosting easy. Everything was going according to plan. Then Sammy Davis Jr. walked onto the stage. It wasn't scheduled. Sammy wasn't on the guest list for that night. He wasn't supposed to be in the building. But there he was, walking through the curtain during Johnny's monologue, and the audience erupted. Sammy Davis Jr. was beloved. A legend. Part of the Rat Pack. A performer who'd been on Carson's show dozens of times over the years. His unexpected appearance was the kind of spontaneous television magic that made The Tonight Show special. Johnny turned, saw Sammy, and his face lit up with genuine surprise and delight. "Sammy Davis Jr., ladies and gentlemen!" The applause was thunderous. Sammy waved, that million-dollar smile, that infectious energy. He walked to Johnny, and they embraced. The kind of hug between old friends who'd shared countless late nights and inside jokes. But when they separated, something was different. Sammy didn't step back. Didn't move to the guest chair. Instead, he leaned in close to Johnny. Put his hand on Johnny's shoulder. And whispered something directly into his ear. The microphones didn't catch it. The cameras captured the visual but not the audio. The audience saw two men in what looked like a private moment, but they had no idea what was being said. And Johnny's face, his expression changed completely. The smile faltered. His eyes widened slightly. Then narrowed with concern. He nodded slowly, once, twice, as Sammy continued to whisper. The audience watched in confused silence. What was happening? This wasn't part of the show. This felt real. Raw. Different. When Sammy finally pulled back, Johnny looked at him with an expression the crew had rarely seen. Not the performer. Not the host. Just a man. Processing something heavy. Something unexpected. Carson stopped mid-monologue. The entire studio froze. Johnny turned to Doc Severinsen and the band. Made a cutting gesture with his hand. The music that had been playing softly in the background stopped immediately. The studio went silent. 300 people holding their breath. The producers in the control room leaned forward. What was Carson doing? Johnny looked at Sammy. You want to sit down? Sammy shook his head. No, Johnny. I need to stand. I need to say this standing. The audience was completely confused now. Say what? What was happening? Johnny gestured to his desk, grabbed a glass of water, handed it to Sammy. Sammy took it but didn't drink. Just held it. Grounding himself. Johnny, Sammy said, his voice carrying across the studio with that distinctive timbre everyone knew. I came here tonight because I didn't know where else to go. I got some news this afternoon. The kind of news that stops you cold. And I was sitting in my hotel room, staring at the wall, and I thought, I need to talk to Johnny. I need to be around people who understand. The studio was so quiet you could hear the ambient hum of the lights. The distant sound of a camera adjusting focus. Nothing else. Johnny set down his cue cards. Walked around his desk. Stood next to Sammy. Not as a host. As a friend. What's the news, Sammy? Sammy took a breath. My mother passed away this morning. Heart attack. She was 72. And the last thing she said to me, I talked to her on the phone 2 days ago. The last thing she said was, "Don't you dare miss the Tonight Show this week. Johnny needs you to keep him honest." The audience gasped. Soft. Collective. Hearts breaking in real time. She loved this show. Sammy continued, his voice cracking slightly. "She loved you, Johnny. Said you reminded her of my father. Same timing. Same kindness underneath the jokes. And when I got the call this afternoon, my first thought after the grief was, I promised her I'd be on the show this week. And I can't break that promise. Even if she's not here to see it." Johnny's jaw tightened. His eyes were wet. He put his hand on Sammy's shoulder. The same gesture Sammy had used moments before. "Sammy, you didn't have to come here. You should be with your family. You are my family, Johnny. This show. This audience. My family is in Pittsburgh making arrangements. But I needed to be here first. Because this is where she'd want me to be." Backstage, he made a choice no producer would have ever allowed. Johnny looked at the cameras. At the millions of people watching at home. "We're going to do something different tonight," he said. His voice was steady but different. Stripped of performance. Just truth. Sammy's mother, Elvera, was a dancer. A performer. Part of the Will Maston trio. She taught Sammy everything he knows about rhythm, about timing, about giving everything to an audience. And Sammy's right. She loved this show. So we're going to honor her. Right now. On live television. He turned to Sammy. What would she want to hear? Sammy didn't hesitate. Mr. Bojangles. Johnny nodded. Looked at Doc Severinsen. Can you do it? Doc, who'd been watching this entire exchange with visible emotion, nodded. Started conferring quietly with the band. They hadn't rehearsed this. Hadn't prepared. But they were professionals. They'd figure it out. While the band set up, Johnny did something he'd never done before. He turned to the audience and spoke to them directly, not as a host, but as a human being asking for understanding. What you're about to witness isn't entertainment, he said. This is grief. This is a son honoring his mother. And I'm asking you, all of you here and everyone watching at home, to give Sammy the space to do this. Not as a performer. As a person. The audience understood. You could feel the shift. The energy changing from expectation to witnessing. From wanting to be entertained to being willing to hold space for pain, the band started playing. Slow. Gentle. The opening chords of Mr. Bojangles filled the studio. And Sammy Davis Jr., who had performed for presidents and kings, who had danced on the biggest stages in the world, began to sing for an audience of one. His mother. Who wasn't there to hear it. His voice cracked on the first line. He powered through. Kept going. The lyrics about a dancer, about loss, about memory. They'd always been poignant. But tonight they were devastating. Personal. Real. Johnny stood beside him the entire time. Didn't sit back at his desk. Didn't try to manage the moment. Just stood there. Present. A silent support. And when Sammy got to the chorus, when his voice broke completely and he had to stop singing for a moment to compose himself, Johnny put his arm around Sammy's shoulders and held him up. The camera operators kept filming even though some of them were crying. The audience sat in absolute silence, tears streaming down faces, witnessing something they'd never forget. When Sammy finished the song, when the last note hung in the air and faded, nobody applauded. It would have felt wrong. Instead, the studio remained silent. Holding the moment. Honoring it, Sammy wiped his eyes. Looked at Johnny. Thank you? Johnny's voice was rough when he spoke. She's proud of you, Sammy. Wherever she is right now, she's proud. But this was the moment no one in the studio, nor anyone at home, ever saw coming. From the audience, an elderly woman stood up. Slowly. Carefully. She was maybe 75, maybe older. She raised her hand slightly, tentatively. Johnny saw her. Gestured for her to speak. Mr. Davis, she said, her voice trembling but clear. I lost my son 6 months ago. Car accident. He was 32. And the thing that's kept me going is remembering that he lived. That he mattered. That people remember him. Your mother lived. She mattered. And because of you, we'll all remember her. Sammy looked at this stranger. This woman who'd shared her own grief to ease his. And something in him broke open. Not in a bad way. In the way that happens when you realize you're not alone. That pain is universal. That grief connects us. Thank you, he whispered. Thank you for telling me that. The woman sat back down. And then, slowly, other people in the audience started standing. Not to leave. To acknowledge. To witness. To say, we see you. Your pain is real. Your love is real. Johnny, let it happen. Let the moment breathe. Let Sammy see that his vulnerability had created something bigger than performance. It had created connection. Community. Shared humanity. Subscribe and leave a comment, because the most powerful part of this story is still ahead. When the standing acknowledgement finally settled, when people sat back down, Johnny walked back to his desk. But he didn't sit. Just stood behind it. Looked at Sammy. What did you whisper to me when you first came on stage? Sammy smiled through his tears. I told you I was scared. That I didn't know if I could do this. That I almost turned around 3 times before I walked through that curtain. And I asked you to help me? To not let me fall apart on live television. And? Johnny prompted. And you whispered back, fall apart if you need to. I've got you. That's when I knew I could do this. The audience erupted. Not in applause. In something deeper. Recognition. Understanding. Gratitude for witnessing something true. Johnny nodded. That's what this show is supposed to be. Yeah, we tell jokes. We do silly sketches. We interview celebrities. But underneath all of that, we're supposed to be here for each other. And tonight, Sammy needed us. So we showed up. He turned to the camera. If you're watching this and you've lost someone, if you're grieving, if you're trying to figure out how to keep going, you're not alone. Sammy's mother, Elvera, knew that. She knew that connecting with people, even through a television screen, matters. That showing up, even when it hurts, matters. That letting people see your grief doesn't make you weak. It makes you human. The show went to commercial. But during the break, something remarkable happened. The studio audience, who normally chatted and stretched during breaks, sat in silence. Processing. Several people were openly crying. The crew members who'd worked on the show for years said they'd never experienced anything like it. Sammy sat in the guest chair, exhausted. Johnny sat on the edge of his desk. Either of them spoke. They didn't need to. When they came back from commercial, Johnny made another unusual choice. We had other segments planned for tonight, he said. Other guests. But I think we're going to end here. Because nothing we do after this would honor what just happened. Sometimes you have to know when the show is over. He looked at Sammy. Thank you for trusting us with your grief. For letting us be part of how you honor your mother. Sammy nodded. Couldn't speak. Just nodded. Johnny turned to the audience, to the cameras, to America. Good night, everybody. Hold the people you love a little tighter tonight. And remember Elvera. The cameras faded. The studio lights dimmed. And Sammy Davis Jr. sat on that stage with Johnny Carson beside him, 2 men who understood that sometimes the bravest thing you can do is let the world see you break. The next morning, flowers arrived at the studio. Thousands of them. Sent by viewers who'd watched. Who'd felt it. Who wanted Sammy to know, we remembered Elvera. Johnny kept one of the cue cards from that night in his desk for the rest of his career. The one where he'd written 3 words after Sammy whispered his fear. I've got you. Share and subscribe. Make sure this story is never forgotten. Because that night, The Tonight Show proved that television at its best isn't about entertainment. It's about being human together. And sometimes, being human means standing beside someone while they sing for a mother who can't hear them anymore.